Have we got any apologies?
Yes, we've got councillors Buckley, Houston, Cosby and John Rhodes.
Obviously, the World Cup has taken its toll. Right, any declarations of interest relating to items on the agenda? No, can't see any. Any problems with the minutes of the meeting in terms of accuracy? Anybody have to propose them? Emma proposing, Dennis seconding, all those in favour? Thank you. 5 is to receive the year-to-date finance update.
No public participation.
Oh, sorry. No, well, I realised those empty seats. Sorry,
That's all
I
right.
just get ahead of
Oh,
myself.
sorry.
Year-to-date financial update. Pete, do you want to give us a brief outline?
I can do. It's fairly straightforward. Everything's spending to profile. There are no risk areas. A couple of anticipated small underspends, which is always better than an overspend. We are generating more interest from the reserves, so that will see a positive effect on the bottom line as well. So there are no risk areas that are identified.
Has anybody got any questions, any comments? Item 6 is to receive the payments, or to accept the payments from the 1st of the 9th of 2022 to the 31st of 10th 2022, amounting to £106,044, £441.56. I'm not used to reading out figures.
So we noticed.
Not big figures anyway, I can manage pounds and pence.
I've just noticed that on that printout, the adding up line hasn't printed correctly. Adding up of £1. So that's the 100,000 part of it. So the figure you see is the X VAT amount, because we don't pay that, we get all of that back. And that, although that column adds up to that sum, which will be seen on the digital version of that, but unfortunately the printout has taken those numbers out for some reason. I can't explain why. Probably user error again. I apologise for that. But it's definitely a digital one, because that's where the big comes from.
Right, so is anybody willing to propose that? Ben, anybody willing to second? Dennis, all those in favour? Thank you. We then move on to the governance documents. We usually take these as a whole, but we normally take the vote as a whole. But
Yes.
Has anybody got any comments on the training and development?
I can give you a slight overview of 7.1 to 7.3. We have, and I'll repeat it every meeting I know, but I'll say it anyway, we have a rolling review of all our policy documents to keep them up to date. And so at each F&G meeting, we bring them, even if there's no amendments, just to make sure they get scrutinised. And then realistically, there are no proposed amendments during those this time, because they're actually done within the last 12 months. Anyway, because the cycle has fulfilled itself now, which is great. It's the whole purpose of the process. At 7.4, financial risk assessment, there are 2 amendments to address advice from the internal audit. And they are highlighted in there. So on the second page, on the transfers, there's a highlighted section, and that's been signed off by the internal auditor. And on the 4th page, on the supplier fraud, that's been signed off by the internal auditor as well. So I've shared in advance of the meeting with them that wording. And that's the only amendment to the financial risk assessment.
Anybody got any comments? A minute or two just to have a quick remind themselves of what it said. Some people going through. Right, has anybody got any questions or comments? So I've had a quick refresh of our memories. No,
Propose that we accept them, Chair.
thank you. Proposal from Ben, Emma seconding. All those in favour? Thank you. All this work that goes in and it's so. Number 8 is risk management scheme and risk register.
Well, we're getting to the exciting part of the finance and government meeting now. And the glamorous bit of being a clerk. Risk management, the Crewe Town Council, to be fair, has had a risk management scheme for some time, which is good. And so I've reviewed it and refreshed it a little, but not a huge amount, to be quite honest. I think I just did some grammar changes mostly. So that is a policy document we had. What I did address is within the risk register it's been corrected and updated quite significantly. So I'm not going to read the risk register to you because it's circulated in advance. It's not very exciting. Again, it's been shared with the internal auditor. It wasn't a requirement of the audit, it was my requirement. It's an important document for the council to have. And so it's here to be recommended for adoption with the risk management scheme to council. Not that exciting, it should all make fairly straightforward sense. It just highlights the risks we have. And they're not all financial risks, these are operational risks, some of them, and where we rank them in terms of severity and what type of mitigation we can put in place, and whether sometimes risks can't be mitigated entirely, so you sort of accept them. But there we are.
Thank you.
Move acceptance.
Right, thank you. Everybody second, Ben. All those in favour of accepting the risk register? Thank you. Right, we move on to item 9, the council delivery plan.
Well, this is at the end of the financial year, once the budget has been, which we're about to come on to, once the budget has been approved, it's a practice, we introduced it relatively recently, that we identify why that budget was written and how it's going to be delivered. So that's the business delivery plan. It's associated directly with each budget line. And because of a business delivery plan, I meet with members of the team individually who are responsible for individual committees and catch up to where they're on that committee aspect of that business delivery plan. And this document gives you an update on how it's delivering. It's going as planned and predicted in the vast majority of it. There's small underspends associated, but there are some slight overspends associated with utilities. Probably the only other risks identified are slight underspends, realistically. So spending profile, spending profile, that sort of thing. The anticipated overspends, which won't be significant, actually will be more than offset by the increase in interest we're receiving from the reserves associated with utilities, homes, and that sort of thing. Okay. But it won't be significant, and it certainly won't affect the bottom line to any measurable extent. It's there just for your, it's part of the finance government's role is scrutiny to double check that, you know, what I'm saying is true or what I'm saying is what you want to hear. Or, so there's nothing in there that requires any approvals, but it's entirely appropriate that the committee keeps an overview of what's going on.
So we're
Just
just
for noting,
noting that.
unless there's an issue that anyone has, but I'm not aware of it.
Right, so are we happy to note that delivery plan updates on how budget is being delivered? Okay, thank you. We're now on to item 10 to receive an update relating to the office accommodation.
Well, here we are in the office accommodation. It remains the fact that there's no viable alternative that I can identify unless someone wants to correct me on that. The office accommodation is still fit for purpose, although it has constraints. It's relatively small, but it does fit us all in, and it's not expensive to operate, but it's fairly modest, which is a good thing. We have provision for parking. That's the thing. It's central, all very positive. It could be argued that there's a bit of inflexibility on the meeting space, and should we have someone with access needs, we would have to make some changes quite rapidly. But as the council and committees are supportive of that, should it be required, we'll address that suitably, because we can't guess that. We have sent out an email today to say about the meeting room. The intention is to bring the full council meeting in December to see how that works, see if it works appropriately for everyone as much as we can make it. And if not, we'll go back out and have another try at something else. And then the only other, because upstairs there's a front and back office room with 3 people in each, and there's a middle room with no windows where I sit. The back room is the smallest one, has 3 people, and it's very tight, to the point of being quite difficult. And the decision was made to put a window in the gable end of my head, effectively, of this room, and that will allow someone else to work in the same room as me and have some daylight while they're working. I'm being a vampire, I don't need daylight. But it's good. It's only positive things, positive improvement to the office. It's not going to detract from the office. It's only going to have that. So and the application has gone in. It's going through the planning process. It actually came before planning committee last night. Planning committee obviously made no comment because we are the applicant. And once that's been in place, there is through competitive quotes, we have a contractor to deliver it, and that's where we're at.
Thank you. Has anybody got any questions or comments on the report?
I believe it remains a corporate ambition of the council to occupy an area within the municipal building at some point in the future, but that isn't available as well.
That's not going to be available, is it, for a
Not
number
very
of years,
soon.
I don't think.
No, I wouldn't have thought so.
not till we join Cheshire West.
Well, let's not start rumours today.
Why not?
The reorganisation of local government back to Cheshire County Council. There we are.
Oh, I don't go that far. I don't see why we couldn't join Cheshire West.
Okay, I don't know.
That's my opinion anyway.
Okay. How about your opinion then? Right, so we just need to note that update. I think there's no need to actually take a vote. And then we're on to item 11, to receive and approve the interim internal audit.
Yeah, it's all very positive. All actions have been put in place. So what we'll get to, interims are effectively from the standpoint of the new financial year. All actions are now in place and agreed with the internal auditor. At the end of the financial year, the end of year internal audit will show all actions carried out.
Just to open this on page, says about the John McBride Trust.
Oh, yeah. Yes, the John McBride Trust comes up quite regularly through the historics of this. So the greyed out areas are the historic ones that stay on there but have been actually or moved on to another point. The John McBride Trust is a trust that was created by a local crewman who moved over to North America, made a success in oil and minerals, and made a request to the town of Crewe for the benefit of Crewe, and created a trust, the John McBride Trust. The benefit of that investment accrues interest from an M&G investment on a quarterly basis. It's not massive, but it's something. And that benefit is added to a John McBride Trust co-op bank account, which sits there and does nothing. The issue has been ongoing for a very long time, and I inherited it. And that is how one would gain access to the funds of the John McBride Trust, which was created in the 60s. And the trust itself is unclear due to, lost in the annals of time. But we're now drawing towards the end of that, and it's not possible to move the prior advice of the internal auditor, which I've tried, I'm not exaggerating, for over 12 months to achieve, was to move the M&G dividend payments are actually paid by cheque to Crewe Town Council, and then we have to then pay a credit to John McBride Trust Co-op account. And the internal auditor, understandably, is of the opinion that the trust money should not travel through the council bank account because it's unnecessary stage of transfer. And I've tried for a year through M&G to get this resolved, and it's not happening. I've taken advice, and although there will be some user error in there, but there is also some absolute complexity associated with an OEIC trust that's within M&G in their systems. So he's updated his advice to seek that the council finds a way of drawing down, or the trust has one trustee, and the trustee is the council. So every councillor is also a trustee in one corporate body of John McBride Trust. So you're not individually trustees, but as a council, you're the trustee. And the council to draw down the value from M&G into that John McBride Trust, and then to use that fund for its intended purpose for the benefit of Crewe. Now, what that could be is entirely, theoretical and not discussed as yet. So that updated mention in the not shaded out part is to take forward, bringing the fund out of M&G and into an accessible fund so it can be used for benefit of Crewe. That's what that's about. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, because I can remember sitting here just before COVID. We had a meeting, didn't we, about it, and it doesn't sound like it's moved forward at all.
It really hasn't, no. It's gone nowhere. It is generating interest, and so one day when that fund is accessed, it's it's got an increased value, which is good. But there's no value in it just sitting there accruing interest. It's doing nothing for anyone.
Well, it's not serving its purpose.
No, exactly right. Now, in Crewe and Antrim days of old, and not even very recently, it was used as a small grants fund. We already have a grants fund, so that wouldn't necessarily be the model you might use. But we'll get to that. But once we've freed up, we can then put it to the trust, which is the council. What is it you want to do with this? And you can find many different ways to consider how to access it, use it, and deliver it.
What sort of sums are we looking at?
The problem with the M&G thing is it's absolutely unclear.
Right.
There are, off the top of my head, 67,000 shares in M&G.
Right.
Now that sounds a lot more than my head, so maybe I've read that wrong. There's about £27,000 in the co-op account for it, and I'm estimating about £60,000 worth of value in the M&G based on the interest it's generating, which isn't massive, but it's some. And so by the time we access it, it will be in that order of under £100,000, but not a huge amount below.
And then how much does it sort of generate annually, is it?
It generates about 250 quid a quarter, so about £1,000 a quarter, yeah.
So there's not enough there to buy another building.
Well, we can't use it.
No, I wouldn't have said so. No, the property prices wouldn't sustain that. No. But equally, it would be what you'd have to consider it from a trust perspective rather than a council perspective. For the benefit of Crewe, what would you want to do with it? But that would be, we'd have to arrange a special trust meeting, which would just be the council, I know, and try and separate the decisions of council to the decisions of a trust. And when we get to that point, which we're not at yet, I think it'd be wise to take a moment to consider how you might access it and what level of engagement you'd want to have prior to accessing it, and then make some decisions about how you would deliver it. Because it was for the benefit of Crewe, and I think it'd be great to have that separation from council to trust and some engagement associated. But it could be put towards projects for the community, projects for individual activities, projects for heritage. You can put towards anything because it seems in definition for the benefit of Crewe. That's the only definition you can find. So that can be, you can literally prove that in any way, shape or form. But no, I don't think it's anywhere near enough to buy a building.
Just a thought, I don't know.
Originally we found there aren't any buildings to buy, are there?
No, but to be fair, the council has enough reserves to buy its own building, so that probably try and advise you to veer away from that situation.
And once it's used, it's not going to be replenished very quickly, is it? £1,000 a year.
No, it's not. But is there, well, it's not really for this people. I would suggest as the consideration, is there a value to administering a fund like that ad infinitum? Or would you seek over a period of time to find out project or projects that you can invest in that would go further for a legacy approach like that? Because the administration of it over, when I would have been dealing with it for a year and a half, 2 years while I've been in post, and it's been administered for no benefit for a number of years prior to that, it's actually eroding value rather than anything else. So I would argue you might want to consider how it could be invested literally into the community for its legacy approach. I haven't got an answer to that, but that's, like I say, for a trust meeting down the line that needs to take place.
Right, well, when you get it sorted out, we'll have a meeting.
Yeah, and we're a big step forward because the auditor has happily moved on from just having transferred from account to account to just free out the account.
Well, we've moved forward. So if no one's got any other questions, can we vote to accept this account? Is everybody willing? Ben's proposing, Dennis is seconding, all those in favour? Thank you. Now we move on to the draft budget 23-24. This has been through all the committees. All the committees have some page 97 it begins. It's been through all the committees. Committees have discussed and changed and you want to start us off, Pete?
Yep, it's practice of the council now to have a thorough budget setting review, which starts in the summer. So we're starting again in 6 months. You'll be exciting to know. And that principle is well, frankly, I give a very broad brush draft budget to the first meeting based on the prior financial year, and then it goes to each committee at least twice. It's shared with members independently to inform it, and officers get an opportunity to inform it early on as well in case there's any projects they're aware that come forward, that sort of thing. And then it runs through the committee to add or take away aspects to it, and then it runs to council and F&G a couple of times, and then eventually this is the end process. Now this budget comes to you with the recommendations from each individual committee for the figures that you see in front of you, with the overarching guidance. There was guidance from council to seek to achieve 3.5% rise or less. And we have got to the point where we have consensus of all committees and that this budget will sustain, and it sits at 3.47% increase on precepts. So below the target, which is nice, only just, but it's there. And it comes, like I say, through that period of consultation with members and a little bit with officers as well. So that's in front of you, I think, I would hope, not as a surprise because you all had a chance to see it quite a lot of times, hopefully, as well. I think 14 bites of the cherry, I think it was, and this is version 8. There we are.
Can I just ask the page 101, that is that Van B property that
Yes.
illustrated council?
Yeah, it just in the box that it surrounds it, just say tax-based banding equivalent. Right, you go left and your finger up a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that is that's not the increase, that would be the total.
Yeah, over on the far hand side is the total. So in 22-23, the Band D equivalent is £85 a year. Based on this budget, 3.47% increase, the Band D council tax will be £87.95 a year, which is an increase of £2.95 on the year.
That's 6p a week.
If your maths is quicker than mine, I'm not going to challenge it right now. So it's been a long day. I'll rest it. If that's all right.
It's 6p a week.
I'm sure you're right.
And that's for a Band D, so that's not going to be most people, is it?
No, we have a disproportionate representation of people in Band A.
We've effectively managed to
carry most of the inflation pressure.
Yeah, there was significant inflation pressure in the operational costs of the council, and through the committee's considerations and members' engagement, the increase has been retained under 3.5%, which is obviously well below the indication of inflation at the minute.
I was going to say that's over 10% at the moment, isn't it? So,
It's approaching 11% now.
Can I ask on the utilities,
Yeah,
have you, is that based, that 6,000, is that based on what the estimate is for the next financial year from
yes,
the increase in April? Because there's gonna be another
Yeah,
increase.
it is. Now, one of our contracts, I can't remember which, let's just, I guess I apologise, which one, is tied in anyway for another 18 months, so that's secured. And equally, I hedged it and tied the other one in for the next 2 years, and that is indicative of that. So we're fairly confident those figures,
Yeah.
unless something happens and we start to, want to heat meetings in the evening, which, why would we do that?
can't do that, we end up staying.
Yeah, that's why we don't boil the kettle for you when you arrive. Save money. So yes, that the best of my guess is
Yeah.
based on the contracts we now have with our supplier. I'm quite confident of that, but I've been wrong in my life, so I'm hopefully not wrong on this one.
We can't predict what might happen with the energy market. can we?
No, but we have contracts in, so
Yeah.
unless it's something I've missed, we should be fairly confident.
So we've kept most budgets to last year's
Yeah, give or take, really, have you?
overall figure, haven't we? Apart from those that need to
Yeah.
rise because of wage inflation.
Effectively, it's this committee's budget which is increased by far the most, because the operational costs of running council in terms of insurances, also so that we draw upon, cleaning and maintenance and things like that, they've all increased expensive, and there was an NJC pay agreement of quite considerable impact, overall 8% impact. That had a draw on it, but then the committees identified opportunities to reorganise their budget lines and still deliver what they expect to deliver. So it's a confident budget. I'm not worried about it, and it's also really positive that you kept it below 3.5%. In fact, kept it below 10%. It's really good. Getting it down to below 3.5% is very positive. It's not ideal to have any increase, but it's £2.85 a year, or 95 was it?
Yeah.
£2.95 a year, which is much.
Has anybody got any more comments? So this will go and be recommended to council in next week,
2 weeks.
2 weeks' time. And then we'll ask for trees for the preset.
We'll put in our demand for the preset from Treasuries, yeah.
So that will, because that needs to be, am I right, by January?
Yeah, we have the December meeting. Some councils take the budget setting meeting in January. My preference and my advice, you have the budget setting meeting in December, in case there's any immediate changes that need to be made. You've got a buffer then of time to do another change in January. We don't, I think, have a reason to this year. I have knowledge of other places where they've had problems, so that's why we have that. So yes, frankly, when it's made, I'll put a request in very soon after that.
Propose that we recommend
Right,
it.
so Ben has proposed, anybody willing to second? Emma, all those in favour, putting this to council? Thank you very much. One item left, but the date of the next meeting is the 6th of March, it seems a bit late, 2023.
You can have another one if you want.
Well, I would have expected one in February.
It's not, none of that's set in stone. You can have a meeting in February if you want. I don't mind.
Don't know, we'll have to see, won't we?
Yeah, if something comes up, we can always add a meeting in this, if we need to. That's what's scheduled in the calendar. The aim of the meeting calendar is we know how the seasons go in terms of operating the council. We know that at the end of the financial year, there needs to be a council meeting prior to the May AGM, and then all committees should shunt up to that council meeting. The council is probably a form of committee work, so that's why it's scheduled then. If you want to run the meeting, it's absolutely fine.
Well, we'll think about it after Christmas.
Propose a change to item 13, Chair, that the 6th of March is changed to TBD.
Yeah.
There we are, that's what we'll do.
And I think, because it would be good, because that will be very close. Do we observe further?
Right, okay, PERDA is a requirement of principal and usual authorities. It is an expectation of parish authorities, so we would observe it, because I think it would go with a significant criticism if you didn't. So that's the 6-week period prior to an election. A council should not announce any new policies or any new actions or any new projects. So the timing of the council and everything sits in that, as I explained, sits in that schedule, so we can fulfil the requirements of the council of this administration, and then we run into an election period. There will be at least 1 or 2 committees prior to that election. For example, we'll have an F&G at the end of April, so you will get 2 in that period, but that's to fulfil the end of year close down, financial year close down, and submission for external audit and receipt.
Yeah, but that wouldn't be any new policy. or
Exactly
anything like
right.
that.
So you can have committee and council meetings, but they have to be
So to me,
routine.
that makes more sense to have a meeting in February then.
If you want,
Well, will you look at the calendar and then we'll and see whether or not it might be a spare day.
we can always fit one in. I'm not trying not to do it. It's just if there's any additional business to put on it, that's the issue.
Well, if nothing else, we can check the budget.
Yeah, quite right. Well, yeah, there will definitely be an F&G meeting before the end of March. Don't get me wrong. We're definitely having that. We'll be checking the budget. But it's just it doesn't bother me when you have it at all.
Well, late February then.
Late
Not a lot-
February.
There's not a lot of difference then, is there?
Late February,
No,
not
only
early
about a
March.
As long as it's not the 29th.
Yeah, I could do that.
Yeah, I've got a birthday next year.
Oh, nice,
Aw.
a young year. Yeah, very good. There we are, Chair. We all?
Yes, thank you, meeting closed.
Wow.
Thanks very much for your attendance.
Good.
Because we're going to the paper, nobody knows what we're talking about.